The music room was filled with chatter as students and teachers gathered around the grand piano. They weren't there for a concert, but for what they thought would be a light-hearted challenge. At the center of it all stood a quiet, simple woman who rarely drew attention to herself. She was dressed plainly, her hands folded nervously as the teachers teased her about trying something far too difficult. With amused smiles, they placed a sheet of music in front of her, a piece known for testing even the most skilled pianists. To them, it was just a game, a way to see her stumble, maybe even laugh at her struggle. The woman, however, said nothing. Her eyes studied the notes on the page, her face calm, yet unreadable. The teachers leaned back, arms crossed, waiting for her to fumble on the keys. Some of the students whispered, certain she wouldn't even get past the first few bars. After all, how could someone so ordinary, someone who had never shown any sign of talent, possibly play one of the most difficult piano pieces ever written? But what no one knew was that this simple woman had a past hidden from all of them. Behind her quiet demeanor lived years of experience, discipline, and mastery that she had chosen to keep secret. The piano in front of her was not an obstacle, it was a part of her, a language she once spoke fluently. As her fingers hovered above the keys, the room grew silent. The teacher smirked, already anticipating her mistakes. Yet in that heavy silence, something was about to happen that would change the way they saw her forever. The first note was only a heartbeat away, and with it, the truth no one expected. The woman's fingers lingered over the polished keys, but she didn't rush. To the teachers, it looked like hesitation, the kind of nervous pause from someone about to make a fool of herself. A few students covered their mouths to hide their giggles, already convinced this moment would become a memory they'd laugh about later. Yet behind her calm face, her mind was alive, replaying years that none of them could imagine. Once, long before she blended quietly into everyday life, music had been her world. Long hours of practice, the discipline of repeating passages until her hands ached, the thrill of performing under bright lights. These were the foundations of who she truly was. But life has a way of changing people. The applause faded, the stages grew distant, and she left that part of herself behind. For years, she never spoke of her past. To her neighbors, to her colleagues, even to these very teachers, she was just another ordinary woman with no remarkable story. And that was why the moment felt almost cruel. The teachers had chosen this particular piece because of its difficulty, certain it would overwhelm her. They believed they were safe from any surprise, that they already knew her limits. But the truth was, they didn't know her at all. The students leaned forward, restless with curiosity. Some whispered about the piece, boasting they had heard professionals stumble on it. The teachers chuckled among themselves, waiting for the inevitable struggle. The woman sat still, listening to the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. She wasn't just recalling the notes on the page. She was remembering something much deeper, something only she understood. And then, without warning, her hands began to move. The first notes spilled into the room, soft but deliberate, carrying a weight that silenced every whisper. At first, the teachers assumed it was luck, that she had stumbled into the right keys by accident. But as her fingers began to flow across the piano, weaving through passages that demanded speed, precision, and strength, their smiles faded. The students, who moments ago expected clumsy mistakes, now sat frozen in their seats. Each note seemed to tell a story they weren't prepared to hear. The conflict grew in the room, though no one dared to speak. The teachers exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence crumbling as they realized this wasn't a performance of chance. They had set a trap, but it was they who were caught in it. Their challenge, meant to embarrass her, had instead revealed something extraordinary. Yet pride kept them rooted in silence. To admit they had misjudged her so badly would mean admitting their arrogance, something they weren't ready to do. For the woman, every keystroke carried both triumph and pain. She remembered long hours as a child, practicing until her hands trembled, her teachers pushing her to perfect every detail. Music had once been her greatest joy, but also her greatest burden. Life's hardships had forced her to abandon it, to live quietly in a world that never asked her about her past. Now, dragged back into the light, she felt the clash of emotions. Was this a chance to reclaim who she was, or a cruel reminder of what she left behind? In the back row, A student who secretly loved the piano leaned forward, eyes wide. For them, this wasn't just a surprise. It was inspiration. But for the teachers, it was something far more uncomfortable. A loss of control over the story they thought they were writing. And the piece was only halfway through. Her hands moved faster now, every note striking with force and clarity that shook the room. The simple woman they had underestimated was gone, replaced by someone powerful, commanding, and utterly in control of the piano. The difficult piece that was meant to break her had instead become her weapon, and with each passing moment, the tension in the room tightened like a string pulled too far. The teachers shifted uncomfortably, no longer smirking, their eyes darting between one another as if searching for an explanation. One of them clenched their jaw, unwilling to accept what they were hearing. Another fidgeted nervously with their pen, realizing this performance was slipping far beyond their expectations. They wanted to stop her, to say the challenge had gone on long enough, but they couldn't. The music had taken hold of everyone, demanding silence, demanding awe. The students leaned forward in their seats, unable to look away. Some gripped the edges of their desks, their hearts racing with the rhythm. It wasn't just beautiful, it was intense, alive, filled with fire. Each note seemed to rise higher, daring the teachers to admit the truth they were still too proud to say. But for the woman, this was more than just proving them wrong. With every measure, memories came rushing back. The glow of stage lights, the sound of applause, the tears she once shed behind curtains when no one was watching. This piece was part of her soul, a story she had buried for years, and now it surged out of her with unstoppable force. The room felt smaller, charged with an energy that no one could ignore. The final section of the piece was approaching, the most dangerous and demanding part, and everyone knew it. The suspense was unbearable. Would she falter now, or deliver something that none of them could ever forget? Just as the final section of the piece loomed, when the room was breathless with anticipation, an unexpected voice cut through the silence. One of the older teachers, who had been watching with folded arms and narrowed eyes, suddenly stood up. His words were sharp, slicing into the tension. He accused her of trickery, insisting that no ordinary woman could possibly play at such a level without some hidden advantage. His outburst stunned the room, the accusation hanging in the air heavier than the music itself. The woman did not stop playing. Her fingers moved with even greater intensity, but inside her chest a storm was rising. This was not the first time she had been doubted, not the first time someone had tried to strip away what she had earned. Years ago, in her past life on stage, she had faced critics who dismissed her talent, saying her success was chance or worse, that she didn't belong. That old wound burned anew, and now it collided with this very moment. The students looked from the teacher to the woman, unsure whom to believe. For them, it was clear what they were witnessing, authentic brilliance, the kind of mastery no trick could fake. Yet authority has a way of bending perception, and the teacher's words planted a seed of doubt. The atmosphere thickened with conflict. Truth against pride, respect against arrogance. Another teacher tried to hush the outburst, but it was too late. The challenge had transformed into something larger than a performance. It was no longer about one difficult piano piece. It was about exposing the truth, about tearing down the walls built by judgment and underestimation. And as the woman approached the most dangerous passage of the piece, the air was electric with uncertainty. Would the music itself be enough to silence every doubt, or would this accusation spark an even greater confrontation? Her fingers launched into the final passage, a storm of sound that filled every corner of the room. The notes flew with impossible speed, yet each landed with crystal clarity. What was meant to be unplayable became effortless under her touch. The students leaned forward, their faces glowing with awe, their doubts erased by the sheer force of what they were hearing. Even the teachers who had smirked now sat frozen, their pride dissolving into disbelief. The accuser, who had shouted only moments earlier, could no longer speak. The music itself had answered him, louder and truer than any defense she could have given in words. As the last chord thundered through the air and lingered, silence fell. It wasn't the silence of mockery or expectation. It was the silence that follows revelation, when no one knows how to respond. Slowly, the students erupted into applause, their voices rising with cheers that shattered the tension. The woman lifted her hands from the keys, her face calm, though her eyes carried the weight of years finally unveiled. She had not only proven herself, she had reminded everyone of the power hidden in those they underestimate. But just as the applause grew, the unexpected happened. A figure at the back of the room stood, someone the students hadn't noticed before. It was the head of the school's music department, drawn by the sound echoing down the hall. His expression was unreadable as he walked closer, eyes fixed on the woman. Then, in a voice low but firm, he said he recognized her, not as a stranger, but as a pianist who had once graced major stages, whose name had vanished mysteriously years ago. The room gasped. The teachers exchanged frantic looks, realizing they hadn't just underestimated an ordinary woman, they had unknowingly tested a legend. And now, with her identity revealed, the question wasn't whether she had talent. It was why she had chosen to hide it for so long. The room was still buzzing from the revelation, but the woman remained quiet, her hands resting softly on the piano keys. The head of the music department's words had lifted the curtain she had kept closed for so long. Students stared at her with wide eyes, their admiration mixed with curiosity. The teachers, once so certain of their own judgment, could not meet her gaze. Their little challenge had backfired, leaving them humbled in front of the very students they hoped to impress. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but gentle. She admitted that she had once been a pianist, performing on stages far away from this small music room. But the pressure, the endless demands, and the sacrifices had become too heavy, and she chose a quieter life, one where no one expected perfection. For years, she lived simply, carrying her music in silence. She hadn't planned to reveal it again until they placed that difficult piece in front of her. The students listened closely, many of them inspired by her words. One young student in the back, the same who had always dreamed of playing piano but feared failing, felt a spark of courage. The woman's story showed that talent and passion could survive even after years of being hidden. The head of the music department smiled and told her the truth. Her gift was not something to hide, but something to share. And though she didn't answer immediately, a quiet sense of peace came over her. She had proven herself not through pride, but through authenticity. As the room emptied, the piano sat still, its notes lingering in memory. The lesson was clear. Never judge someone by appearances, for even the simplest person may carry brilliance that can change everything.